last video, we inserted our zip between our outer and lining fabric. And now what we're going to do is put it all together. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to fold up our two outer fabrics so they are facing each other. Actually, before we do this, you need to undo your zip halfway. That's really important, otherwise you won't be able to turn it inside out once you've sewn it together. So we're going to fold it so they are facing each other. A few loose threads here. And lining up my corners, I'm going to pop a pin in the corner like that. I can see my stitch line that I chalked in. You can just see it faintly here. Make sure your pin is inside that. Now I can pin my other side, matching up my corners. And I'm going to put a pin in the middle there as well, remembering to keep your pins inside your stitch line that you've drawn. Then I can do the lining side, so they're facing each other, the right sides are facing each other. Match up those corners, pop a pin in. And one in the middle. You still see really faintly my stitch line which I drew in here and here. Now here, where the two meet, this is a little bit tricky. So what you're going to do, you've got these seam allowances here and here. You're going to face one way and the other one is going to face the other way. And you're going to put those up together so they meet. You see that? So they meet in the middle. And then we're going to pin those together. We'll do the other side, so we're going to do the same. We're going to make one seam allowance go one way and the other seam allowance is going to go the opposite way, like that. And then we're going to match our seams together like that. You see that? And then we'll put our pin in carefully so we don't pin ourselves, to hold it in position. Now at the bottom here we need to leave a gap. So to do that I'm going to put a pin here and here. So I'm putting these pins through the stitch line which I've drawn, because I'm going to start from this one and I'm going to finish at this one. And when you sew, starting from that pin, you're going to sew all the way around, and you're going to use that chalk line or pencil line that you drew as a guide, and then you stop here. So all the way around. Stop there, leaving a gap to turn it inside out. Now to sew it, we're actually going to use the zipper foot, because we have this big lump here from our zip and we need the zipper foot so we can get nice and close to that area. So just remembering, you got a little button at the back, press it in to take off the normal presser foot, pop in the zipper foot on the left hand side, and then pop your threads at the back. Okay, so starting just after that first pin, finding your stitch line which you chalked in, you'll start with a little, might just move that, a little reverse stitch, and then when you get up to your chalk line, you're going to put your needle in to turn the corner. Now here's where I've got that real thick bit. So I'm going to pull it from the back and from the front to keep it nice and flat. I'm just feeling where that is. And I'm going to stitch almost up to my pin, using my hand wheel to carefully go over that part. Just have to lift that up because it's going to get caught. And then I'm going to take my pin out. We don't ever sew over pins because we could risk snapping the sewing needle and we don't want to do that. You can see I've just had to lift my foot up to get it to go over that lump. Alright, then I'm going to continue along, trying to stay on that stitch line that you chalked in. Doesn't matter if you're a little bit off, it's just a guideline. So if you are a tiny bit off, that's okay. You can see I'm a little bit off on mine. Turn the corner. Turn the corner. Now I'm coming back to that really thick bit again. I'm going to keep that nice and flat. Stitch almost up to the needle. Sorry, not needle, it's a pin, not a needle. Take it out. Pop your foot back down. And you see there I use my hand to keep the fabric in place. Continue. Using that chalk line as a guide. Got one last corner to turn. And then I'm going to stop before my pin with a little teeny tiny reverse stitch. Okay, so I've done that. I've got my gap up here. I can take all my pins out now. Pop them back in the pin cushion. And then we are ready to turn it inside out. Alright, so we've got our gap here. Open that up. And you're going to pull your pencil case through that gap. Now this is why we had to leave our zip open, so we can pull it out here. I'm going to pop my hand in the gap there to try and turn it out a bit more. I'm also going to unzip that all the way now. Now I've got my corners here. Now I want them really well turned out. So I'm going to get a pair of scissors. So a pair of scissors, very carefully, I'm going to go into the gap, pop them into the corner, and just very ever so carefully work that corner out until it's nice and square. That looks pretty good. Now I can do the other corner. Okay, and then I can do my lining corners as well. So just in the gap. Now my lining fabric's a bit thinner than my outer fabric, so I have to be very careful. I don't want to poke a hole in it. Last corner. Okay, so I've turned out my corners. Now I've got this gap here I need to close. So what I can do is pull that tight. And you can finger press. You can iron this if you want as well. I'm just going to finger press because it's cotton and it will press easy. Now if you pull it tight when you do it, you should get two nice folds that line up. And I'm just going to put a couple pins in there to keep it together. And then I can stitch, top stitch along there to close that gap. So I can see here is where the hole starts, just there, and it finishes here. So I'm going to stitch that back at the sewing machine. You can do this with a normal presser foot, it's just that I've got the zip one on still, so I'll do it with that one. Little reverse. Take your pin out as you get to it. I'm just making sure my fold is still lined up. And then I've got to stop here. Finish with a little reverse. And there I have stitched my hole closed. Okay, so trim my threads. Oops. And then I just poke my lining into my pencil case and bring out the corners here around the zip. Got a little thread there. Make sure you trim all your loose threads. Another one there. Okay, and that is my finished pencil case. Fully lined. Now once you finish, I would suggest you give it an iron before you submit it for marking.